Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of the CEDH cast, also known as the Canadian cast, possibly. We'll see. This is an episode again where I'll be talking about Canadian Highlander. But before we get into that, I want to discuss the Major League Commander League that's coming up. So, MLC is an event being run by Callahan of the Sculpty Boys or the Mind Sculptors. Basically, it's going to be like a league with teams and regions and all that fun stuff, and a draft that is going to be on, I believe it's going to be on his channel. It might be somewhere else. It starts on May 1st with the draft, and then every weekend I'll be playing on Sundays. And I think I have a bye one week, but we'll be playing with the decks we draft. There will be some special rules on deck building and things like that, but just make sure you check it out. It's being advertised on Twitter and on Discord. I'll be making sure to post a lot of content about it once it gets started, but that is when the CDH content is probably going to be coming back in full force, so look out for that. Now, the Canlander content today is we're going to be discussing Sorenson, a blue-green tempo deck that is one of the more interesting decks of the format, and it's the deck I've been having the most fun playing recently. So, blue-green Sorenson is named after Robin Sorenson, one of the progenitors of the Canlander format. Sorenson is a tempo deck, which means it's trying to land threats and be disruptive, trying to kill your opponents using these evasive or growing threats, while also making sure that your opponents can't use their cards the way they want to use them. This either means denying them mana or trying to just barely get them. Like cards like Force Spike, Daze, Force of Will, all very powerful. And all these cards help make your creatures bigger most of the time. Additionally, we have pump spells, which can invalidate certain combat math to really blow out your opponents, while they also allow us to one-shot our opponents if we're behind on board and we have one turn where we can kind of just go all in and just get them, which is the thing the deck definitely does. So if you're interested in the Sorenson archetype, there's a few videos online also about it, but we're going to be talking a bit about the threats and the answers and the points and some of the just ideas behind the deck. I'm pretty new to the deck though, so don't consider me the authority on Sorenson. I know, for example, the way I'm using my points isn't the way most people use their points. It's just the version of the list I thought looked like the most fun. And I also know that there's some newer cards that I like that maybe some other people don't like as much. And I like cards like Werebear, but I don't really like Nimble Obstructionist. Things like that where there's just individual decisions on single, card evaluation that maybe people will disagree with. So first, the points. So I'm on Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time as my two big delve card advantage spells. I'm on an Ancestral Recall and Mana Drain. So Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time are really great because they allow me to kind of dig in that late game. Ancestral Recall allows me to do the same thing, and I have a couple ways I can recur Ancestral Recall thanks to Gush and Daze and Mystic Sanctuary. So that's obviously, not going to happen every game because I can't really tutor for Ancestral Recall, but it is going to allow me in some certain positions to really dig myself out of a mess. And finally, Mana Drain is super powerful. It allows you to have mana to deploy your threats while also, being one of the best counter spells ever printed. It also allows us to afford some of our more expensive pump spells or something like Treasure Cruise on turn 3. It's just a really powerful card. It makes sense that it's pointed, and obviously you could find a better card in that last point probably, but or maybe even play like a Mystical Tutor instead of a Dig Through Time and a Mana Drain, so you can find Ancestral Recall more often. I'm not really sure if this is the best point spread, but I've been really happy with all these cards in the deck, and I personally wouldn't make any huge changes. So the first creatures we're going to look at are the ones with evasion. These aren't all of them, but these are the really big ones. The only one that is really missing that is probably worth mentioning is Delver of Secrets, which is a 1-mana 1/1 that at the beginning of your upkeep, you look at the top card of your library, and if it's an instant or sorcery, you reveal it, and then Delver of Secrets becomes a 3/2 with flying, so it's almost like a lightning bolt every turn. So Brazen Borrower is a removal spell when it's a petty theft, which is really useful because it triggers like our Quirion Dryads and our Dragon Scale Elites, which are some of our threats that grow when we cast spells. But additionally, Brazen Borrower is 2 spells on 1 card, which can also be really useful. And having 1 in a blue to bounce a threat or mess with the block math on something can just be super. It can make it a huge blowout. Your opponent can double block one of our grow creatures, where they think they're gonna really be able to kill it, and instead you bounce one of the blockers, and then your creature grows, and now it just completely eats the other creature that's left blocking and survives. That's kind of insane. Next is Nimble Obstructionist. At 3 mana, I don't think it's the best cycling effect, but a 3 mana 3/1 with flying and flash is pretty powerful, and it's pretty easy to cast. And if you can stifle like an Aether Vial and draw a card, that's still pretty good. I was able to use it to stifle a Mother of Ruins, which made it where the opponent made the mistake of blocking and then activating Mother of Ruins, so that the creature was already blocked but didn't have protection. So then I was able to win in that combat pretty effectively and get ahead on board. So that's pretty useful. And finally, we have a Vendilion Click. It allows you to look at target player's hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do that, player reveals the chosen card, puts it on the bottom of their library, and then draws a card. So one of the powerful things about Vendilion Click is that it's disruptive. You can cast it during your opponent's draw step, so they don't have an opportunity to play the card they drew for turn. You get the information. You can choose not to take any card, but you'll often take the card that either answers the threat that you have or puts them too far ahead for you to be able to kill them in time, or maybe you just leave the card. And I've actually, if I think I'm ahead enough on board and I just need like one more piece of action, you can target yourself and maybe put a land or a pump spell to the bottom if you're looking for like a removal spell. So yeah, these are pretty powerful cards, and they do a lot. They all have multiple abilities that can kind of change from game to game. One of the problems with Tempo is you have a lot of these cards that are really good in specific situations, but they're not good in every situation. And the powerful thing about these 3 cards is that because they have evasion and they're 3/1s, means they're very realistic threats, while they're also all answers to certain specific problems that are pretty common in the format. Non-land permanents, activated or triggered abilities, and just cards people have in their hand. These are all things that become problematic for our deck sometimes, and so being able to have cards that can either become a threat or are a threat that also answer something is really powerful. Next we have the Beaters, and so these are just the cards that we put on the battlefield and they get really big really quickly. Mana Gorger Hydra is probably the most threatening one because it has trample built in, which means it carries our pump spells super well. Dragon's Guard Elite is the newest one. It just came out in Strixhaven, and it starts out with a bigger body, which means that it can more early on in combat block or get in, and we don't have to really worry about maybe a shock or something because we have a gush in hand or something like that. Korean Dryad is the classic. It's the original version of this effect, and hasn't been outclassed yet in my opinion. But I think one more of these effects and maybe we'd cut it. There's another one of these we're on. It's 1 in a green, and it has this ability whenever you cast a non-creature spell, but it's a 1/1. So it's worse than Dragon's Guard Elite, most likely, since most of our non-creature spells are just instants and sorceries. And we also have some free spells here that are useful just for pumping our dudes, and they might even be useful in other situations. So Gitaxian Probe and Mutagenic Growth both grow our team. Gitaxian Probe gives you information. Mutagenic Growth can make a creature really big really quickly. Gush is also a free spell. It returns 2 islands to our hand, but often it can even be used to make mana. So you have 2 lands, you don't have a third land for your land drop, you return your lands to your hand, float the mana, play the other land. Now you can play like a 3-drop or something, or maybe now you just have 3 mana to play 2 threats. So that's really powerful, and of course it's very powerful with Mystic Sanctuary, where it can reset our Ancestral Recall if we get lucky. And we also have our pump spells. So our pump spells are Giant Growth, Berserk, and Become Immense. We also have a couple protection spells like Snake Veil and Blossoming Defense. Those cards are also useful, but these are the cards that we're usually killing people with. Imagine our Mana Gorger Hydra is like a 9/9. Put a Berserk on it. That's game. Become Immense, same deal. Giant Growth, same deal. A lot of these cards, especially if you think about Mana Gorger Hydra or our Quirion Dryad. Well, actually, Quirion Dryad, that's not the case. It's one of the reasons that the new Dragon's Guard is so good. But if you play a Giant Growth on our Dragon's Guard, it actually just gets +4/+4. Same with our Mana Gorger Hydra and the Deep Root Champion. So these cards are really useful, and they allow us to like kind of in one turn go from losing to winning. Because what you do often is you're just disrupting your opponent, slowing them down, letting your team grow bigger and bigger. You kind of attack knowing that no matter what they do, you win. And you might have another piece of disruption, so even if they have like one thing, you can still get in. So these cards are really good. A lot of the stuff I'm showing you is very similar to like a Miracle Grow deck, and that is because it's kind of the easier thing to talk about for this deck as I'm like newer to it, and it's definitely the easier part of the deck to understand. What's difficult to explain is the tempo-ness of the deck and how the deck works to disrupt your opponent. A lot of it is by casting these cards like Force Spike or Force of Will or Wasteland or Richard Import, and using these cards just make it harder for our opponents to play the game, harder for them to deploy their threats, countering like a key spell that they need to win. So if you're playing it's a combo deck and they need to put 2 cards in the battlefield and one of them's junk and one of them's good, you let the junky one resolve and you counter the bad one. Now they're totally off kilter for the next few turns, and you use that opening to kill them. That's the kind of thing you're doing with the tempo deck. So think about that if you end up picking up the deck, and it's definitely something that I'm getting better at playing. If you've played Najeela, often it's described as a tempo deck in Commander, and that's kind of true, but there's definitely a bit of a learning curve to this kind of Magic. It's more difficult, and your decisions are a lot more punished. So yeah, hopefully this video got you interested in the Sorenson archetype. If you have any questions, I'm sure you can go onto the Canlander Discord, ask on there. People are super helpful. Robin Sorenson's on there, although I'm probably paying him too much already. But you can probably ask him if you have any questions about the future of the archetype or what it looks like right now. You can also join my East Coast Canlander group where we just play online. Even if you're on the East Coast, you can feel free to join. Just know that in the future, we're probably going to start doing events in paper as things in the world open up and people get vaccinated. And finally, if you have any more questions about the format, feel free to ask me. Leave them in the comments. I'll try to get to them. And support the channel if you can. Obviously, things are moving in a different direction than a lot of people expect. So if you like the Highlander content, please give us a little support by liking, subscribing, or even checking out the Patreon. So have a good one, and thanks for checking the video out. Have a nice day. Bye.